everybody. Welcome to On the Clock with Caroline Clark. I'm Caroline Clark, Chief Brand Officer of Women of Power at Black Enterprise. And today I'm absolutely thrilled because we have joining us one of the country's and the world's most transformational leaders, Cynt Marshall. Her name is known to many in sports now, but throughout corporate America, she has a long, stellar career as a leader, and she is currently the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. And recently somebody mentioned that CEO in Cynt's case might just as easily stand for Chief Energy and Optimism person. So I'm thrilled to have her with us. Cynt, how are you doing?
I am doing great, especially as we're like 5 or 6 weeks into this. I'm doing great. I'm feeling great. All of my family is doing great. You know, I have most of my family, my mom in California. I have a son in Southern California. And so they're doing great. We're doing great here in Texas. And so all is good. All of our employees are doing great. We haven't experienced any sickness. I know a few people who have lost some folks. So that always weighs on us. And the fact that, you know, we're up to 63,000 people who aren't with us anymore, that weighs on you. But health-wise and all that, in terms of my immediate family, we're blessed. We are truly blessed.
That's really good news in a difficult time. You mentioned how many weeks we are into this. And I know I spoke with you about a week ago and happened to pop in, and you were hard at work on your reentry plan. And you noted that you don't have a date, you just want to be ready. So I'm curious, as we sort of turn the clock on another week, if you can see the light at the end of this tunnel.
Actually, no, because we are still focused on health and safety. And as I mentioned before, we're focused on the data and not the date. And we're waiting for the experts and the scientists to say it is safe to get out and it's okay, you know, to get out there and get back in the mix. We don't know how we're going to come back in terms of playing basketball. Commissioner Adam Silver is still working through that and doing the same thing, talking to the experts and all that. Clearly, we want sports to come back. I mean, it's a great unifier. We all miss it, but we just have to do the right thing for our players, our fans, and all of us. So with my team on the business side, we are working through our kind of reentry, our restart plan. We don't have a date, but just like we had a business continuity plan in place when we ended up going out when the season was suspended, we want a good plan in place when we come back. And so we're looking at all aspects of reentry in terms of kind of our readiness assessment, making sure people are ready, anybody who can work at home, who needs to work at home, because there are a lot of people who just don't want to come back right now across the country. And we get that because for a variety of reasons. And then there are some on the other extreme that need to come back because of depression, isolation, all that. So we're looking at all the people aspects of it, the building aspects of it, you name it, how we're going to create, you know, physically distant workspaces, just everything. And some of it maybe we won't need, but we'll be ready.
You mentioned the word unifier, and it strikes me because, you know, every week has been different with this thing, right? There's been a different feeling. There have been different sets of dynamics at work. But in the last couple weeks, this week, in addition, we've entered a new phase where there's not a sense of unity around a plan and around the notion of when to open up, how to open up. So as a leader who has so many dependent upon your decision making and is managing so many different forces and opinions and potentially policies in terms of this, how are you managing those various pressures and making your own decisions about what is best?
People have heard me talk about this before, and I believe it was Walt Disney's brother Roy who said it's easy to make decisions when you know what your values are. And I know what I value. And I know that we have a set of values in our workplace: character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety. So we have focused a lot on physical and emotional safety. And that's where my mind, my head, my heart goes right now. Is it safe? We have said it's a value. Is it really a value? And the answer is yes, it's one of our values. And until we feel safe about people coming back into the workplace, they're not coming back in. And I don't care who else says it's okay. I have to live with that as a leader. The Lord has entrusted me to lead a big group of people. I have to be okay and feel like it's okay when I ask them to come back to work. And I don't feel like that right now. And I can't feel like that when in Dallas, we're still we're peaking. I mean, we had the highest number yesterday of deaths and cases. I'm not going to ask anybody to come back into that kind of environment. So we'll know. We're standing on our values right now. They actually mean something. I recently did a deep dive on all of our values. A couple weeks ago, I said, I want to do a paragraph, and it's a project I've had for like 6 months. And I said, okay, let me sit down and really just go deep and write a paragraph on each one of these values, because it's something I want to put up in our workplace. And so I've just been working on it, but it turned into something else. I said, as I was writing, I said, I actually want to ask a question. Are we living up to these values right now? Can our employees actually say, as a leadership team, we are living up to this right now as it relates to how we're treating them? And I went one by one and actually felt real good about the fact that the answer is yes. And so I'm not going to violate it now and stop living the values because somebody thinks it's okay to come back to work. They don't get to make that decision for my team.
I know one of the ways you've been remaining visible with your team and transparent is sending a message to them every single week where you share, not just work things, but a light story about your own life at home, what that looks like, and encouraging them in various ways. And I think this is a place where many companies and leaders are falling short. It's hard to be visible when you're sheltered at home, for one thing, and it's difficult to be transparent when there are more questions than answers. So where does that impetus come from in you? How do you step out there with such assuredness with these things that you're doing, and how have they landed with your team?
Well, I think it goes back to that quote you often hear me say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, you have to communicate with people and touch them and talk to them so that they can know that you really do care about them. So we have our cadence in place. I have my certain meetings with my task force on Mondays. I meet with my executive leadership team on Tuesdays. I meet with the entire organization on Wednesday, which is when we really get to talk about stuff. We kind of open it up and ask people, are you learning something new? Because that's one of the things I conveyed early on, is we don't know how long we will be sequestered in the house. So we all need to come out having learned something new, professionally and personally. So we need to, because we're just not gonna work 24/7. So I'll find out who's doing what. So I'll hear stories about, I'm learning to cook, or I'm learning to go fishing, and all kind of stuff. So we start off with that. Then I'll bring in an expert. We brought in an infectious disease doctor. We just brought in a mental health specialist this past Wednesday. So we bring in people to just provide some expert opinion. And then we do the update on the business stuff and all that. And then throughout the week, we have like meditation, different meditation days and all that kind of stuff. Am I getting feedback? I feel like I'm getting some feedback.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so then we ended up basically saying, okay, I want to do something in writing. So I want to do something in writing. So every Friday, I send them a letter, #my2cents. And I just open up thanking them for another productive week. And because, we're still, doing work. And then I start telling stories about what is going on in my house. And so I will talk about, I'm afraid of animals. So I'll talk about Louie the dog, my daughter's dog, who literally had taken over my house at one point. I would go out. I said, I want to work in the backyard this afternoon. Well, Louie's in the backyard, literally lounging on my patio furniture. I mean, like tearing it up, everything. And so one day I said, okay, well, can I go out there? And they're like, no, well, Louie needs to be outside. Well, then I started exercising regularly. I go in there to get on my treadmill. Well, they had to put Louie in the garage because of the thunderstorm. He's on my treadmill. I'm like, this dog has to go. Okay. And so the girls ended up moving. Louie's gone. So that's our big thing now, even with my team, is #by Louie. Because I would tell them these stories. I would talk about I have to jump off conference calls because my husband has every TV in the house on. The TVs are blasting. He said he does not need a hearing aid. The TVs are blasting. And so then I have to jump off the call. So one time in particular, I jump off the call, I go to the door, I get the stuff, I put it in the kitchen, I come back. And so later he said, where'd that come from? Why didn't you just like tell me? I mean, aren't you working today? I'm like, yes, but obviously you can't hear. Okay. So anyway, so I just tell them all these stories, and it's great because everybody is adjusting and going through stuff in their house. In fact, yesterday was my 37th wedding anniversary. And I said, this thing needs to end so I can make it to 38 because I have got to get up out of here. So anyway, but I tell them all kind of funny stories, and then I try to convey some piece of insight that I've had for the week. So like for last week, I talked to them about the reach in foul, which is a basketball term, but the fact that we are committing the reach in foul right now on purpose. So we are reaching in and helping out all kind of community organizations. And that's what we are choosing to do right now. I thank them for everything they're doing in the community. I talked to them one week about my new .com because it just hit me one day that my priorities had changed. What was top of mind for me had changed. Like the first couple of weeks, it was all about the employees making sure they knew they were going to get paid, getting them set up for our employee reimbursement plan, where we're asking them to really order from local restaurants so that we can keep those restaurants in business, making sure that they understood the business continuity plan, who to call, resources, all that. So it was all about them, making sure the players had their activities. And then I had to take a deep breath and said, okay, we're not playing basketball right now. And it dawned on me that we're not playing basketball, but we are playing the game of life with people right now. And how are we going to make a difference? And I started thinking about the new .com. So before we end today, I want to tell you about the new .com and what was top of mind. And I put that in that letter, and it has just really started something with our employees. So I will tell you about that before I end.
Okay. You mentioned the game of life. You know, you came into this job a couple years ago into a crisis, right? It was crisis that precipitated Mark Cuban's reaching out to get Cynt Marshall in to do this job because the Mavs, as most people know, were in the midst of, a gender crisis related to its treatment of women. And you came in with a very hyper-specific plan, a set of goals, a timeline. You had all your leadership tenets in place, but you also had very clear goals, and you had sort of a measure of control, right? Yes. Now, here you are just a couple years later in the midst of an unprecedented crisis in which there's virtually no control. And there's an enormous amount of uncertainty around everything. How did your management of the crisis you came into the Mavs dealing with inform how you're managing through this crisis?
That's a great question. I think the fact that I know these people now, and I know what they are capable of enduring, because a lot of the people that I lead right now were at the Mavs when I got there. Now, clearly we have some new people and pretty much a new leadership team, but the core of the folks, they were there. And so they have lived through a lot, and they have overcome a lot, and they know what to do. They know how to rise to the occasion. They know how to put new policies and procedures in place. So I had faith. I absolutely had faith in my team. And I definitely had faith in my ability to lead them through a crisis, because I've led them through one crisis already. This is just another kind of crisis. I think the fact that we put a set of values in place when I got there informed what we did right now, our business continuity plan and everything we kind of laid out. We ran up against that set of values, which is why I had to just stop as I started digging deeper into them to make sure we were okay with that. And I think the whole focus on diversity and inclusion that I brought when I got there is one that I wanted to kind of come out in this process to make sure that as we are putting our community plan together, which is most of what we have been doing, is that it had a flavor of touching all communities. And so this is where it's good to have a diverse group of people around the table so that you won't miss any communities or any needs. So for example, one of the first things I thought about when this happened, because of my background, is all of the kids who wouldn't be able to eat 3 meals a day because they wouldn't be at school, or all of the kids who wouldn't be able to learn because they don't have access to technology, or the fact that child abuse and domestic violence would probably go up because home is not always a safe place for people. That was top of mind for me because of my background. Other people had things that were top of mind for them because of their background, but because we're such a diverse group, I think we covered most of the bases, which was great. And so all of those things I focused on when I got there. And then of course we developed great community partners and really reached out into the Dallas area a lot. People actually started to call us about different needs. So it's just what we do. It's just what we do. It's leadership. This is where leadership really matters. And you will see who can truly lead in a crisis and who can't. And it was important for me not to panic, have a plan in place, and respond to people's needs. And so we have been doing that. And of course, Mark Cuban, my boss, he's been out there doing amazing things, advocating for people. This is where you take your status, whatever it is, celebrity status, leadership status, your influence, and you do something good with it, because people are hurting. We are truly in a crisis in this country, and we can't sit back and just wait for it to pass and just worry about the financials of a company or an organization. This is where we step up and we lead a community, because it's bigger now. The community is bigger now. And it's actually been heartwarming to see so many people step up and lead in this kind of crisis. We're doing it.
You've spent so much of your career in diversity or advocating for diversity, regardless of the position you were in, right? Mm-hmm. Even when that wasn't specifically your job.
Right.
As we see across the country, such high numbers of people being displaced from work, being furloughed, being laid off, offers being rescinded that were once, there was once the hope that people were going to get a level up, and now they're stepping back. Do you have a concern about the impact that will have on gains that have been made in diversity for women and for minorities? And if so, how do we ensure that we don't lose ground in those places?
I actually don't have that concern. I think that one of the reasons we are doing as well as we are doing, and Lord knows there's so much to do, but it could be worse, okay? There's just so much to do. But I think one of the reasons we have been able to respond to certain needs is because like I said earlier, because we've had a diverse group of people actually involved in the process. And so we're covering a lot of bases. We just don't have one group of people making decisions for everybody. And so I think we are benefiting to some degree because of some of those diverse voices. Now, we may not have them in everywhere we need them. I mean, we could stand to have more diversity at certain levels in certain places, but where we have that diversity, I think we're seeing some good things happen. And I use the whole Dallas area as an example. We truly have a diverse group of policymakers, business leaders, sports people, I mean, you name it, making good decisions, I think, for the area. What I'm concerned about the most is that we have some disparities in this country around health, around education, around access to technology, around access to capital. And these are long-standing issues that we need to address. And they've been around for a long time, and now they are front and center. We can't hide them anymore. They have existed, and now we need to address them. And I think because this thing has been so heart-wrenching and heartwarming at the same time, I mean, this really is a heart thing that's going on right now because of all the deaths and all that. this is the time to kind of pull at those heartstrings and say, let's come together and address it. So for example, I was on a panel yesterday with Dr. Hinojosa, who is over the Dallas Independent School District. And also I was with Judge Clay Jenkins. And Dr. Hinojosa started talking about what's happening with virtual learning and technology and all that. And it has really bothered him that some of his students can't learn right now because they don't have access to technology. So he is starting something called Operation Connectivity, where he is going to address what I call the digital divide. And I stepped up right then on the call and said, the Dallas Mavericks will be right there with you. Our chief technology officer has been working with them already. Let's handle it. That would not have happened without this crisis. So I think because we are a diverse group of people paying attention, good things will happen. I think we're actually going to make progress. I don't think we're going to back up. We can back up if we want to. And this is what I keep, I keep talking about this too. We didn't have a choice about the fact that we had to come into this house. We didn't have a choice about being forced to stay in here and all that, okay? Coronavirus took over. But we do have a choice about how we come out of this. We can decide how we emerge from this. We can decide that we're going to come out better, stronger, more of a community, more of our kids will have access to technology, the black and brown kids who don't have it, the white ones too, and the Asians, everybody. We can decide that we're going to be a better community and get rid of some of these disparities because they are front and center right now for everybody to see. We can't hide them. We get to decide if we're going to take it on. And so shame on us if we don't decide to take it on. Obviously, you can see I have a lot of passion about this. Because you know what? I said, I'm not going to sit here in this big house and write big checks and think that's my contribution to all of this. And that's what I've been talking to a lot of my friends about, my professional friends and the ones that have a little bit of money, and we all started out with nothing. Well, you know what? We're going to leave here with nothing. So why don't we just put our money where our mouth is and not just write checks, but really engage in the public policy process, really engage in some of these things that really, really matter to our future, and go ahead and start to address them right now. I told my friends, I don't even want to talk unless you're telling me what you're going to do different and what your cause is going to be when you walk out of the house. So people know that's all I want to talk about. How are you going to emerge? How are you going to be different when you come out of the house? Because if you're not going to be different, stay in the house. Stay in the house.
You know what's interesting though? You're talking about people being different. The reality is, I know, Cynt, that you have always, been front and center in the service realm. You have dedicated your birthdays to giving gifts to others, and this is just baked into you, right? Partly because you come from so much difficulty in your family as a child, having dealt with domestic abuse, having dealt with not having enough, having dealt with not having access, and all those different things. I know it means a great deal to you. You're an adoptive mother. You've been a foster care mother and been involved in that realm of just empowering those who don't have it without you, right? But are there ways in which this really, you feel, has changed you and maybe caused you to reset your own set of priorities and purposefulness? Because you've always done these things.
Well, I think it has told me not to get comfortable. And so, for example, you said it, we have 4 adopted kids. Okay, all out of foster care, sad stories, all that. 4 kids. They're all growing up now, doing their, they're doing their thing. They're all working. The girls are out of the house now, so it's all good. And I'm on a board of CASA, the Court Appointed Special Advocates, and so I do all my board stuff and all that. But I'm not a CASA volunteer. I don't go into the homes of the foster kids. I mean, my husband actually is a CASA volunteer. I'm more at the board level. Well, this is making me think, okay, maybe I can be at the board level, but also actually get trained to be an advocate. Maybe it's time for me to go back in some homes and help these kids. Now, I'm 60 years old. I got 4 of them. I'm not trying to adopt anymore, but maybe I can go and really help and get some others adopted. It has told me not to get complacent and not to just sit on some of these good things, supposedly, that I've done in life and done for people, because there's still kids out there. there's still others out there, and I'm able to help them in different ways, and not just sitting on boards or not just writing a check. And you're right, I do a whole lot of stuff. My whole birthday project Heaven Sent 60. We were just anonymously blessing families and doing all of that around the country. I have started Project Heaven Sent 60 all over again as a result of this, because that hit me one day. I said, okay, looks like it's time to do that again. And then time to really kind of get back into some of my ministry work and spend some time with some up and coming emerging leaders in the faith-based community, which I actually got a chance to do that a couple weeks ago. It was so heartwarming. I couldn't remember the last time I sat on a call for 2 hours, just pouring into some up and coming faith-based leaders. And I used to do that. And so it's making me realize what actually feeds my soul. And I'm going to do more of it, because, you know, just like anybody else, you get caught up in your pace. And this slowed me down a little bit to really realize what's actually important to me. And so I got to get back, you know, and start doing some of that.
You've always been a model of resiliency from the time you were very, very young. And I know that your teams, whether they were at AT&T or at the Mavs or at the Women of Power Summit, have really been inspired by that and followed that. But I am curious, as we talk about the magnitude of these issues, some of which already existed, some of which have been deepened and intensified by this pandemic. How do you, I mentioned at the top, someone recently called you, you know, your title could be Chief Energy and Optimism, Chief of Energy and Optimism, not just CEO, right?
Yes.
How do you, though, when things really hit you hard and that energy and optimism gets dented? Because I know you have a heart for those who struggle with depression and anxiety. I know you have some of that in your organization now that you're very mindful of.
Yes.
When you feel yourself sinking, what prevents you from going all the way down? What's your source that keeps you rising again and again, no matter how overwhelming the problems may seem?
I feel like I should just pick up this computer and just take you in there, because I have this little prayer closet right outside of my bedroom, and I spend quite a bit of time in there. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it is unplanned, because I have learned in my life that there is something bigger working all the time than Cynt. And I learned it a lot when I went through my cancer battle. And I talked about that, in fact, to my team in a letter when this first started, and I tweeted about it, how I focused on the can in cancer when I got sick. And it was based on Psalm 91, and the Lord being my refuge and my strength, and a true release of the fact that there are some things I'm not in control of. And I truly know how to tap in to that source. I know how to tap into faith. I have truly, I've lived it. I know that we'll come out better on the other side of it. I've had so much adversity, and the Lord always shows up faithful. And so I know that. And what I do, I get in that prayer closet and I just talk to the Lord. I talk to him like he's just sitting there, because he is. And I have my little pink, sticky notes, and I have people's names up there, including mine. And I don't just keep my name up there. I put it up there when I feel like I'm in need of prayers, if somebody else is praying for me. But I have all my little notes and all that. And then I just go and I talk about all the different people and the situations. And then I just stand still so I can listen and see which way he wants me to go, because I cannot do this by myself. I will mess it up. I have done that before, where I will pray about something. My mother used to always say, if you put something on the altar, leave it there. And so I have been known to put it there and pick it right back up and handle it myself. And I mess it up. And so I guess maybe just over years, I realized that I can't do it all by myself. And, sometimes I will call my mother and I say, okay, this is going on. Come on, we got to join together. We got to pray. We got to kind of talk through this because I can't do it all by myself. It is rare that I get down. It's rare that I get depressed. It's just not who I am. And I can say that in my life right now. I mean, when I had 4 second trimester miscarriages and then a daughter who died at 6 months old. And I can tell you one time when my husband left to go see his parents right after that, because he just needed a break. I needed a break. He left the house that Friday. I laid out on my stairs. I was trying to walk up the stairs. I laid out on those stairs and I was there until he got back that Sunday night from Friday. I never got back up. Just crying and just dealing with the grief and all that. And when he finally got back home, he said, "Are you okay?" He said, "These are the same clothes. Have you been laying here since I left on Friday?" I'm like, "Yes." I couldn't get up. I mean, I would just lay it out crying. I mean, it was at the point where I just couldn't even pray. I don't know what I was saying. I was just laying there because the grief, it was just so heavy. And I think about that often because the beautiful thing is that Sunday evening, I got up. I stood up. He helped me up those stairs and I just started to get on with my life. We ended up adopting the kids and all that. And I think about that moment. I think about when I had chemo and chemo brain. I couldn't even remember my kids' names. I always think about these moments where I was down, but I got back up. By the grace of God, I got back up. And so in this situation, I just didn't even get down. My spirit gets heavy when I hear the numbers and the deaths and all that. And at first I said, well, I can't even watch the news. And then I thought, well, that's irresponsible. I have to watch the news, first of all, because I'm a leader. So I do need to know what's going on. I have to read. I have to stay on top of this. And then I also have families to pray for and to mourn with. And I know how to do that. And so I said, no, I do need to watch the news. I can't just kind of try to escape this. And I'm just trying to help people because I can, because I've been through some things and now I get to give it back and help them.
So much of what sports represents for people is that resilient spirit, that championship spirit and energy, that recovery from deep losses to go on and win, right?
Yes.
As you think about the reentry, I know you're on the business side, but you have a heart for the team. You have contact with the team.
I love them.
Have you heard from them? Is there anything that they do hope to bring to the sport, to the fans when they come back that will be different? Do you have a sense of how they are changing and the game may change as a result of this?
I think obviously we all miss it. They miss it. And I pray for them all the time too, because even like on the business side, yes, all of our world stopped, but their worlds really did stop. I mean, this is what they have trained to do. This is what the coaches have trained to do. I mean, this is their world. And it just came to a complete stop. And so I pray for them all the time that their spirits will stay up and, that they'll understand kind of that, this, and truly they know it's bigger than basketball, but they will understand that, they'll come back. I mean, they will come back and we'll all come back and it will be different. And we just don't know what that different is going to be like. I don't even want to call it anymore. I was calling it the new normal. And I said, I don't know if there will ever be such a thing again as normal. Maybe this is just going to put us in a place where we're always going to be thinking creatively. We're always going to be innovative. We're always just going to think about how to do it differently every day. And so I'm just, I know they're going to be okay. And they want to come back and they still train and they still do all that. But I think also we have to think about them as people. I mean, they have family members. And so they were, they're in the same situation as the rest of us, trying to make sure they're staying healthy, trying to make sure they're complying, trying to make sure their family members are okay. I felt bad for some of them, they couldn't, go home and be with family members because, they're in market. And so I'm sure that had to be hard. So I prayed for them too, because just like my mom being in California, they have the same issues that we have. And I think they just want to come back. They know the fans miss them. So the fans have been really pouring out, letting them know they miss them. And we've had them engaged online and all that. And they volunteered. They have made donations. What I love is I've seen their hearts. And I know they're champions off the court too. But I think more people know that now because they've been involved in causes and all that. And I think at this point, yeah, they're ready to come back and show the fans that, you know what, We appreciate your support. We appreciate the fact that this is different, and we're going to bring it to you. And I haven't spoken to any of them, but I know that because I know who they are. And I've actually spoken to a couple of them, but not on this particular topic, but I know who they are. And they want to come back and bring it to the fans. I think the fans will be so happy to see them play, but they won't be happier than the guys actually out there on that court. And we just don't know what it's going to look like. We just got to be patient. It's a good test for everybody, especially some of our younger people.
You mentioned that they're complying, and I happen to know that compliance is one of your new.com.
Yes.
And you mentioned this to me recently, and I really thought that it does lay out a framework for all of us to navigate through the rest of this, whatever it throws at us. So can you talk to us about the Cynt's new.com?
Yes, my new.com. In fact, someone yesterday said, I went to the website and I can't find anything on new.com. It's not there. And I went back and I said, no, that's just what I named it. I mean, there's nothing out there. So I sent my son a message and I said, go and get the domain. Okay, because people are looking for this. Okay, we got to give it to them. Okay, so the first one is compassion. And this is when I said all of a sudden I realized a few weeks into it that my priorities had changed. And these are the things that were top of mind. Compassion. People need it. We have it to give. We need to give it. And we need to be compassionate and give people a pass on a whole lot of things right now. And so compassion was the first one. And then communication, that we cannot over communicate. There's so much that's unknown right now. People just want to talk. We need to, as leaders, we need to be there for them, but we just need to be there for each other. We need to do our Zoom stuff. We need to call people. We need to reach out because everybody's just looking for information and they want to talk. They want to reach out. And so that's why I don't like to use the term socially distant. We have physical distance, but we can still be together. So I found out communication is key, and especially like some of these employees who want to talk to me in the evening, and then they want to talk for hours, and I love it. They just want you to touch them that way. So communication, community service is in high demand right now. Nonprofits, I mean, I just can't even name all the organizations, healthcare workers who need help with childcare. I mean, there's so many needs. My boss mentioned to me last week about funeral homes, because obviously they're seeing more action than normal, and they're worn out, they're tired, and we're providing meals to a whole lot of people. That's an aspect of the community we hadn't touched. So just asking my team to really think about all the needs in the community and how can we help. So it's at an all-time high, and normally we're philanthropists and all that, but it's different right now. And then compromise, that I do have a compromised immune system from having chemotherapy. And it dawned on me one day, I had been working so hard and it was midnight and I hadn't eaten. And I realized, well, I didn't realize it, somebody on my team, Tarsha, realized it. She said, Cynt, this is the third day in a row that I talked to you late and you hadn't eaten. What's going on? And I said, well, I'm just running hard and all that. And she says, you can't do that. I mean, you can't do it. Normally you can't do that, but also you already have a compromised immune system. We're already worried about you anyway. And that's true because of chemo. And it's like when, you're riding a plane and they say, if the mask comes down, you put the mask on yourself first before you can save anybody else. And so it just really came to me that I had to pay attention to this, not to this already compromised immune system, that I was compromising even more because I wasn't eating right, because I wasn't exercising, because I just wasn't doing the kind of things I was supposed to do to keep my immune system strong. And with this particular illness, you absolutely have to have a strong immune system to kind of get through it, which is why a lot of people aren't. So I said, okay, I better focus on that. So I've been eating healthy. I've got my elliptical, my treadmill. I'm lifting weights. I'm looking good. You wait till you see me next time, girl. I'm ready. And so compromise, and then of course, compliance. That it is very hard for some of us to stay in the house. And for me, it's not even about, trying to go into my office. I want to go and volunteer. I just had this day where I said, I can sit up here and write checks. I want to go, not physically touch somebody, but I want to be out there. I want to put boxes together at the food bank. I want to see these people pulling up and I want to wave to them and know that somehow, we're impacting their life. I want to be out there supporting the volunteers, giving somebody a break so they can go and just sit down. And I cannot do that right now. And it was driving me crazy. And I was trying to figure out ways where I could do it. I think I mentioned to you, I was going to go have the antibody test. I said, I'm going to have that test because I think I already had COVID. And if they tell me that I'm okay, then I'm going to volunteer. Well, I actually got the test back yesterday. And fortunately, I did not have it. I was just sick in February, but I didn't have it. Meaning, of course, and I don't know what it was going to mean anyway, because I should stay in the house anyway. But it just said, okay, you have to comply. You have to listen to the experts. If there's an order to stay home until a certain day, you have to do that. But I also have to do it as a leader because I have to be a role model for everybody. And if we're being told to comply, and here are the rules right now, we have to comply. So as a leader, that's what's top of mind for me right now. Compassion, communication, community service, compromise, keep my compromise system strong, and comply with the rules. That's my new .com. That's my new personal platform as a leader.
I love it. I think it's very usable for everybody. I want to ask you two questions before we go. One is, I want you to give a word because you spent years and years in HR. You're a CEO of a dynamic company where, generally your folks don't have to worry about if they're going to have a job tomorrow. But there's so many people who have been furloughed, who have been sidelined. What do you say to those who have been displaced from work by this about how to use this time without losing ground?
I would say use this time to think about, first of all, think about what is it that you really want to do in life that could be different from what you were doing. If there's a different way you can do it, if there's a way you can do it online, is there a passion that you have that has nothing to do with what you were doing? Are there some skills that you have? Is there a phase 2 that you always thought you'd go into in life because maybe phase 2 was coming sooner than you actually thought? Now that's just taking the finances away. The financial situation is real. And I know my boss has been working a lot on trying to help people get loans and all that stuff. So the financial situation is real. And I think this is where some of our churches and our community organizations, et cetera, come in to help people. And that's why we've been doing a lot of philanthropy to help those organizations. So parking the financial situation aside, which is hard to do, that's real. But then you got to think about future. If that job doesn't come back, you have some decisions to make about what you want to do next. And I just wouldn't lose hope. I just absolutely would not lose hope. And you know me, I'm a spiritual person. And I truly believe the scriptures that says the cattle upon 1,000 hills belongs to him. This is God's world. This is his. And he's got us in the palm of his hands. And so we've got to cultivate our skills and our abilities and realize, yes, things are changing and things are new. But there is something else out there for us. We're coming out of the house. We might come out, though, doing something different and something even better than we were already doing. So it's opportunity time. It's truly opportunity time.
Final word, I'm going to ask you about something completely off this grid for you usually, because you mentioned that yesterday was your 37th wedding anniversary.
Yes!
And I happen to know that y'all two have been in it for even longer than that.
Yes.
So, you hear a lot of talk these days. People are holed up together, and it's not easy every day. So can you give folks a word on how, how you keep your relationships going strong for so many years, and how you do it when you're challenged in close quarters through difficult times and crisis?
Here's what, well, if I can hear by the time I come out, I'll be okay. These TVs are killing me. But here's what I tell people all the time is the secret to my marriage. I can't speak to anybody else's marriage. The secret to my marriage is that Kenny has a life, I have a life, and we have a life together. I did not give up who I am. I did not give up my life. I didn't give up my dreams, my aspirations, what I wanted to do as a businesswoman. I didn't give any of that up when I said I do. And he didn't give any of his stuff up. When we moved to North Carolina, and he ended up, quitting his job. We stay-at-home dad. And he made the mistake one day of calling me on the way home, and he was getting ready to say, "Are you on your way home?" But he stopped because he said he caught himself. He knew better. He's like, "Ooh, I'm not supposed to do that." And he said he knew what I was going to say when I walked in the house, and I walked in and he said it with me. He said, "Get a life." I said, "Yeah, get a life." Because we had just moved to North Carolina and he hadn't found his life yet. He hadn't found his men's group. He hadn't found what he was going to do. So he was just a little bit off, because that's the secret to our marriage. Everybody has their own stuff going on, and then we have our time together. And that's what has worked in this house for the past 5 to 6 weeks. At first, I had stuff all over the house. I was just everywhere. And he finally said one day, he says, "Okay, there's a computer in the kitchen. There's a computer over here. I had devices and screens everywhere." He said, "Where exactly are you working?" I gave him some of that head action. I said, "I'm working wherever I want to work, bro." And so he said, "Well, I'm just trying to figure out kind of like my space. It's that kind of thing. You have a life. I have a life. We have one together. Like, you're in my life now. Because normally, like, this is my space over here. Because, normally I'm at work." I said, "Oh, right. Okay, well, let's lay this out." So now I got my whole little studio. I got my whole setup right here in a room we normally don't use. And then he's got his space. And then at nighttime, we come together and we might sit on the patio or sit in the family room and watch TV. So we all had to get our little space together, because I was kind of in violation of that, because I was just taking over everything. That's what I do. That's what I do. We worked it out, though. We worked it out.
You worked it out. You worked it out, and we will work this out. We know this too shall pass. Thank you, Cynt. Thank you for the time. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for that amazing smile that brightens every day.